All right. Hi, everyone. Listen, I have waited a couple of days to address this issue, and today's the day. I'm jumping in. Want to talk about the TD Jakes live medical emergency that unfortunately he experienced after preaching at his church on Sunday, which obviously is something that he has done many, many times that pastors tend to do on Sunday. So he's preaching live. And of course, we are in this era where services are generally live streamed, right? So you're seeing what's happening in real time. So if you don't know, most people do, but if you don't know, unfortunately, Bishop Jakes suffered a medical emergency live at the end of his message. I will tell you, I did not watch the entirety of the video. First of all, I just don't even have the fortitude, like the guts to watch these things. Hi, I see you all joining in. And secondly, it just felt like such an overreach to even have access to what was happening in that medical emergency. So I want to talk about legal precautions that every church should consider, some legal takeaways for every single church as a result of this instance. Okay. So there are three things I want to make sure that I cover. The first is this whole issue of privacy. I really think this incident highlights so much the concern, thanks for the heart, around privacy and the right to privacy and what is an invasion of privacy. So I will be the first to admit that this was an incident that happened live. It happened because the church was streaming it, right? So it's not as if anybody went in to gather this information. The church was sharing this information, obviously not anticipating what happened. So, but once we knew, right, once the video was out that this incident was happening, hi, I see you guys jumping in. Listen, feel free to drop any questions that you have as we're going through. Okay, I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Once we realized that this was a real medical incident, and once the video started circulating just from private individuals, right, sharing about this instance, I really think it was incumbent upon us, us as the body of Christ, B, us as just general humans with hopefully care, to maybe not consume and reshare such a private moment. I think if this were my pastor, if this were my parents, if this just a loved one, I just could not imagine. I have had, and I'm sure we all have had loved ones to have medical concerns. And I cannot imagine it being filmed and sent around social media in perpetuity, right? So it really raises this issue of privacy. And I don't know if you know this, but actually, I'm going to read this. This is from from a publication that shared that there was a complaint, actually, that TD Jakes filed a complaint on Monday. So this obviously had been in the works. So I'm sure that this was by his legal team on Monday, suing a former pastor because he said that Jakes was embroiled in sexual assault. So this was a libel claim. And so I'm going to read this directly. So Bishop T.D. Jakes, also renowned as a motivational speaker and author, filed a federal lawsuit on Monday against Dwayne Youngblood over comments he made on the Larry Reed Live podcast last month, accusing Jakes of sexual abuse. So we know that a part of what's been happening too is that this whole matter of what's been happening, whether it's Diddy or other things. And I'll just say, I have no idea. I have no idea what occurred. I am living in the same world as you also have heard the allegations, but I just want to raise the issue of when specifically related to the healthcare, that privacy, there is something in the law that I'm sure you've probably heard the reference, invasion of privacy. Now, whether Jake's, when he is fully recovered, whether his legal team will review how this really private moment has been circulated, I guess only time will tell. But I will say I do have concerns around the way it's been handled. And as an attorney who has represented churches for over 25 years, and this is all I do as the church attorney, I do have concerns about that. The second thing I want to say is related to what I read in this claim. So the whole idea of what people hypothesizing around what actually happened, what the medical emergency was, and not just hypothesizing within their heads, right, but sharing it, because that's what defamation is. Defamation, there are two kinds. There's libel and there's slander, right? So one is spoken, one is written, but they're all under this legal umbrella of defamation. So when someone makes a harsh or negative, a harmful claim, and it is untrue, and it is published, and it causes harm, those are the four legal elements of defamation. So it's a negative, harmful comment. 2, it is spread. 3, it is it creates like some actual measurable harm, right? That's the big part of it. And 4, that there is some way of actually measuring the claim, right? There's an actual claim. So when we go into the whole thing of defamation, that is a concern. So I want churches to make sure that they have a way, right? So you as a church, every church leader needs to have some sort of boundary around what information is shared, when it is shared, especially when it could be perceived as harmful. Because there are claims filed regularly and increasingly against church leaders. And someone actually just sent me, they thought that this was an existing client, and I was able to just move it along to where it needed to go. But there was a claim that was filed because the pastor said something over the pulpit. And again, it met, at least that the moving party, the plaintiff in this case, the church member in this case, felt that it was harmful, and it was said over the pulpit, and then this case was filed. So this happens all the time. And again, I don't know if Jake's will move forward, but it does immediately give rise, in my mind, to possible defamation and maybe claims that could be shared. And then secondly, for invasion of privacy. The next thing I want to mention is, from what I could tell, people very much moved into action. So the notable actions that I saw is, 1, they cut the live stream. So that's a blessing. And those of us who've been around a minute might remember very different context, but the Super Bowl, right? Remember the Super Bowl where it was Janet Jackson. There was a flash, I guess, a flash of flesh. And then they started this 5-second delay. And it just makes me wonder if churches want to consider something similar in their as they go live, consider some sort of delay, because things do happen. And I'm so, I'm not even talking just about this kind of thing, but things definitely happen. And so that might be a legal consideration, a procedural consideration that churches want to take away from this instance. The next thing I want to mention is, does your church actually have an emergency policy? Do you have a policy about how you handle emergencies? And let me tell you what we want to make sure that we cover there. We want to outline the different kinds of emergencies. We know that, unfortunately, in our world, we are experiencing more and more emergencies around weather. So weather emergencies, we're having emergencies around, health-related things, which is what we saw with TD Jakes. We have emergencies around, unfortunately, weapons and things of that nature. So in general, it's critical that churches have an emergency policy. And if you don't have that, this is a great way to sort of wave the flag, to sort of have some takeaways from this experience so that your church actually has these things in place. Last and final thing I want to mention related to this emergency policy is back in the day, so I'm raised in the church. Back in the day, we had like ushers, and they had their formal white uniforms. And if somebody, had any kind of medical matter, the ushers were often a part of helping. Yes, I see you all. Yes, this is exactly how it was. So if your church has anything like that, like, do you have any kind of medical team that's readily available? I love that people went into action to pray. I love that people went into action to cut the live stream. I love that people went into action to make sure you call 911, right, to get the necessary help. But also, again, I don't know if this is something that Jake's church has. I imagine that it would be. But does your church actually have some medical availability on site? And if you do, again, that raises all kinds of legal issues as well, because I've dealt with issues where people perhaps would say, we're just going to pray, right? We're going to pray. And I mean, I am a person of prayer. I firmly believe it. And this whole thing of watching as well as praying, right? So making sure that we are praying, but also that we have some action that as directed by God, and certainly in these areas of health concerns. So making sure that if you have a medical team, making sure that they are trained, making sure that a part of their training is making sure that they engage the right and proper team outside of the church. So having that team in the church, but definitely calling 911, making sure that the professionals, the hospital, all of the people are notified so that we can ensure that we preserve life, right? That's really the goal. We want to preserve life as long as God has us here on this earth. We want to have the full experience of our lives, and we want to make sure that we honor just humanity. So again, for those of you who came in a little bit late, we really are talking about what we can take as these legal precautions, the key takeaways for every church. So you want to make sure, number one, you consider issues of privacy. Invasion of privacy is a legal claim. We want to make sure that we consider that when we come to medical emergencies. Number two, we don't want to engage in defamation. We don't want to say negative things, spread it abroad that can cause harm, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is we want to make sure that you actually, as a church, have an emergency policy. And there are a number of areas that we want to consider there. And what I always say is the only thing worse than not having a policy is having a policy we don't follow. And the key to being able to follow the policy is to have the policy and continue to review it and make sure that people know how to apply it when the time comes. There's a reason why thank God schools have fire drills and things like that. We want to make sure that in the time of peace, we are preparing for these challenges. So I hope that this is a help for everyone. I wanted to make sure that I shared this. And again, prayers to the entire family, and make sure that you also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. That's where I put a lot of this information out. And also I am excited to be able to share that we are going to be we provide a lot of templates. I provide a lot of templates through my Faithful Foundations membership. So if you have not gotten on the wait list, we have something fantastic coming up. I want to make sure that you are there. I share these templates with churches. I make sure that that you have this insight, because this is the time that we want to make sure that the church rises up to any challenges as we go into 2025. All right. Blessings to you all. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the membership and in the next live. Blessings. Bye.